Hello, Bobby Torres of Frightbox Recording here, and let's talk a little bit about how you can get your mixes nice and loud, just like your favorite records, like an actual pro. Now, if you've been mixing for any length of time, I'm sure the topic of loudness has crossed your mind. Whether you're thinking about getting your mixes louder or you read online people obsessing over getting their mixes louder. And the mistake that so many people make, especially when starting out, is they think loudness comes from just taking your mix and slamming it through a limiter or using some fancy piece of gear or something like that. They think it's the thing that you do at the end of your mix. But the reality is loudness really comes down to how you treat a specific element within your mix at the source. And that's what I'm going to reveal to you in this video. And I'm going to share with you my new favorite tool for making my mixes nice and loud and make my clients happy. So I have a mix here that's in the final stages that just needs to be a little bit louder in order to compete with other records for when I send the file to the client. And I'm going to share with you how I accomplish this. Let's listen to the mix as it stands right now. Now, the sample you just heard is by my good friends in a band called Poeta. I will leave a link below in this video's description to their music if you'd like to check it out. So as you can hear, the mix is nice and punchy, pretty polished, but I want you to pay close attention to the level in my master fader as it stands right now. As you can see, a lot of those peaks are already getting close to zero. Now, me personally, I do not want to limit any of my peaks before the mastering stage, but I do want to get my mix nice and loud, again, so it can compete with other mixes, and also so mastering can be super simple. The truth is, and this is something that a lot of people don't think about, a lot of those peaks that you see in your tube bus are coming from your drums, and more specifically, your snare drum. So the question is, how do we deal with this? Well, my favorite way of dealing with this is to use a clipper plugin on my drum bus. Now, I've used a ton of different clipper plugins and tape saturators throughout the years in order to accomplish this task. And the one thing that I'm not too crazy about is a lot of them are very complicated or overly complicated, or they eat up a lot of CPU. They might have controls that don't really make sense to me, when in reality, all I want to do is clip the level. Now, clipping is different than limiting. When you limit a signal, you're actually turning down the peaks. When you clip a signal, you're just getting rid of the transient. But the great thing is, if you tastefully clip drum transients, you don't even perceive it as clipping. So what you're actually doing is taking off the transient and getting rid of extra peaks on your drums without any sonic penalty. So now, like I said, let's go back to the source here, and I have my drum bus. Let's take a look at the peaks in my drum bus as they are right now before I even get to clipping. So my drums are really peaking between -6 and -3 on my drum bus. What I want to do is I want to reduce the average peak level on my drums and maybe even make my drums sound a little bit louder. And what this is going to do is reduce the average level on my tube bus or my master bus so I could turn up my overall mix without having to limit my mix at all. So in other words, I'm making my mix louder without having to slam it through a limiter, which is something that the mastering engineer could do, or I could do in the mastering phase. And the great thing is that the mastering will sound way better because it'll be doing less work to the mix. So my new favorite tool by far for adding clipping to my drum tracks is the new clipper plugin by Black Salt Audio. And I'm going to tell you why in this tutorial. Okay, here's the plugin. I love it. Super simple. You have a control here to set your ceiling of the clipper, and you have your input volume. That's it. My kind of plugin. There isn't an overabundance of fancy pants controls that really don't do anything or do things that I'm not interested in. All I want to do, like I said, is shave off the transient on my drums, and maybe even turn up the input into the clipper so I'm increasing the perceived loudness of the drums, but turning down the average peak level. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna play the audio back, and I'm simply gonna lower my ceiling so the average peak level is lower on my drums, and you're gonna notice that you're not gonna hear any difference in the drums, which is the goal. Let's check it out. So now my drums are peaking at around -6 dB. So I have an extra few dB of headroom, and the drums overall are in more control. So when he hits a floor tom or a rack tom and a snare at the same time, there are no crazy peaks on my drums, which in turn is gonna help with any crazy peakage on my 2-bus or my master bus. Now what I'm gonna do here is I'm actually gonna turn up the input into the clipper. So my drums are actually gonna be slightly louder, but the average peak level is going to be quieter. Again, this is great because it's creating extra headroom on my master bus. So I'm gonna increase the input by about 1 dB. And let's do an A/B comparison of the drums with and without the clipper. And let's pay close attention to the actual peak level on my drum bus. So there you have it. My drums sound just as punchy and just as crisp as they did before I clipped them, and I'm getting something for nothing. I'm actually keeping the perceived volume of the drums the same, but creating extra space and headroom on my mix as a whole. So what this means is I can now go in to my master bus, and I have a limiter on my master bus, but I don't want you to be confused here. I'm not using the limiter for any form of limiting. What I'm using it for is just to increase the output of my mix. But again, I do not want to limit any of the peaks. I want to leave that to the mastering engineer or to myself if I master the track. But again, because we've created extra headroom simply by reducing the ceiling on my drum bus with the Black Salt audio clipper and increasing the input, I now have some extra wiggle room at the final stage of my mix to increase the loudness without having to clip the mix or limit the mix in any way, making the mastering engineer's job so easy, or making my job easier when I master the track. So now let's increase the mix by a few dB without any adverse effects, simply by increasing the output of my 2-bus. Let's do that. So there you have it. I was able to squeeze another few dB out of my overall mix without having to add any limiting, and my mix is still well below 0 without any stray peaks taking place, all because I clipped my drum bus and I got the loudness situated in the mix itself. Again, I'm a huge fan of this plugin because it's simple, it does what it says it's gonna do, and doesn't have a bunch of bells and whistles that I do not need. Definitely my favorite clipper plugin by far. Now, if you're interested in checking out the Black Salt audio clipper, I will leave a link below in this video's description. There's a 14-day free trial of the plugin, so you can try it in your own mixes for free. So I'm curious to know, do you use clipping in your mixes? Is this something that you're familiar with, or is it something that you've never heard of until today? Leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'd love to hear your opinion. If you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And do not forget to click the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload one of our weekly videos on all things metal and rock production. Now, if you're looking to improve the clarity and crispness of your mix, I don't care if you're using an analog console, outboard gear, stock plugins, overpriced, expensive plugin bundles, whatever, it doesn't matter. It all comes down to how well you understand basic EQ and compression. And because of this, I'm offering you direct access for absolutely free to my crisp and clear Heavy Mix formula. The Heavy Mix formula is comprised of 3 primary components: an EQ and compression cheat sheet that features all of my starting points for EQ and compression when I start a mix. The PDF contains clickable links to private tutorials where I show you how I mix all of the main instruments within a heavy production, and each tutorial comes with a multi-track download with the exact same files that I'm mixing, so you could practice your mixing along with me. The Crisp and Clear Heavy Mix formula is free right now, and you can have direct access by clicking the link below in this video's description. Until next time, happy mixing.